However, today has gone for you so far, and however many hours you have already put into your revision, welcome back. This preparation is long, it is often lonely, and it asks you to hold enormous amounts of theory in your head while the news keeps moving. That is exactly why we do this every day. This is the Sociology Desk, issue 85, and in the next few minutes, we are going to take three stories from this week and turn each one into a concept, a thinker, and a sentence you can actually write in the examination hall. No filler, just the sync between current affairs and your sociology optional that separates a good script from a top one. Let's get started. Our first story sits inside paper 2 under Challenges of Social Transformation in the subunit on violence against women. There is a plea before the Supreme Court seeking a special investigation team, an SIT, probe into allegations of gender-based violence by police personnel and vigilantes at the Jantar Mantar protest site. Now, you may be tempted to write this up as a law and order story. Do not. This is a theory question wearing a news headline as a disguise, and the concept that unlocks it is one of the most tested ideas on modern power. Here is the idea in plain language. Modern power does not mostly work through the king's law and the executioner's axe. It works through constant, quiet surveillance and correction, training bodies to behave rather than punishing them dramatically after the fact. When you read that women protesters at a demonstration site are facing disproportionate policing, you are watching this exact mechanism in action. Their presence in public, sustained and visible, is treated as disorder to be corrected, precisely because it unsettles where society expects women's bodies to be. Notice that the event gives you one sentence of evidence. The theory is where your marks live. The thinker you must name here exactly is Michel Foucault, and the exact concept is disciplinary power, sometimes called panopticism. In his work, Discipline and Punish, Foucault argued that power in modern society functions best when it is dispersed into routine surveillance rather than concentrated in the dramatic spectacle of punishment. Memorize that formulation almost word for word. If you can reproduce it and then apply it to a protest site in one sentence, you have already done what most candidates fail to do. Now let me put on the examiner's hat for a moment, because this is the slide that actually moves your score. A candidate scoring around 14 out of 20 will open by narrating the Jantar Mantar incident for several lines, mention Foucault's name in passing, and stop there. A candidate scoring 18 or 19 does four things differently. First, they open with the structural claim that protest is the moment when disciplinary power becomes visible, not with the news itself. Second, they name the mechanism precisely: surveillance and correction of bodies, not a vague reference to state power. Third, they bring in a counterthinker. For instance, Gail Omved's reading of women's protest presence as deliberate political assertion rather than disorder, which shows the examiner you can hold two frameworks in tension. Fourth, they close by grounding the resolution constitutionally, using someone like Ambedkar's idea of constitutional morality, rather than simply saying the police should behave better. Remember the refrain: the event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. Here is a question to practice on your own. In light of recent allegations of gender-based violence in the policing of protest sites, critically examine Foucault's concept of disciplinary power as a lens on state control of dissenting bodies in India. Give yourself 25 minutes and see if you can hit all four moves we just discussed. Our second story takes us into paper 1, into sociology as science, specifically the subunit on scientific method and its critique. India's information technology rules amended in 2026, now require labeling of what is called synthetically generated information, and platforms must take down harmful synthetic content within 3 hours. This sounds like a technology story. It is actually a direct challenge to the oldest assumption in scientific sociology. Positivism, the founding doctrine of scientific sociology, rests on one wager: that society, like nature, can be known through observation of a stable, independently existing fact. Now think about what it means when an artificial intelligence, an AI, tool can manufacture a video or a cloned voice of a political leader that never actually said those words. The observable fact no longer guarantees its own truth. Verification stops being something your eyes and ears can do and becomes a technical, forensic exercise instead. That is the crisis you must name in your answer. Name Auguste Comte here, and the concept of positivism precisely. As Comte argued in the course of positive philosophy, society could be known with the same certainty as nature, once knowledge passed from the theological and metaphysical stages into the positive stage. Your job in the answer is to show exactly how synthetic information strains that wager, and then, if you want the extra marks, bring in Jürgen Habermas's distinction between communicative action aimed at understanding and strategic action aimed at manipulation, because that is precisely what manufactured content is designed to do. Here is where candidates lose marks without realizing it. A 14 out of 20 answer spends most of its words explaining what the new information technology rules actually say. An 18 or 19 out of 20 answer uses that regulation in 1 or 2 sentences only as evidence, and spends the rest of the space making a meta-theoretical claim that positivism's premise is now structurally strained, not just technically inconvenienced. Then it layers in a second thinker, Habermas on manipulated consensus, and ideally a third, Partha Chatterjee's idea of governmentality, to show that the state's response itself governs populations through technique rather than through public reasoning. Close by saying method must now supplement observation with provenance, and democracy must supplement regulation with public reason. That sentence alone signals stop-ban thinking. Try this one. Is the positivist assumption of a stable, observable fact still sustainable when information itself can be synthetically manufactured? Critically examine with reference to India's digital content regulation of 2026. Notice the verb, critically examine. It wants both explanation and evaluation from you. Our third story is international, and it belongs in Paper 1 under Religion and Society in the subunit on secularization and religious revivalism. Across Slovenia, France, and Poland, and in structurally similar ways in Hungary and the United States, populist parties are instrumentalizing Christian identity against migration and against Islam. This is not a current events trivia point. It is one of the most reliable perennial themes in this examination, and it deserves your full theoretical attention. Here is the concept in plain words. Religion's real function has never been about belief in the supernatural. It is about classification, drawing a line between a sacred domain that a community reveres and a profane domain it treats as dangerous or polluting. When populist parties turn Christian identity into a boundary marker against migrants and against Islam, they are doing exactly this classificatory work, regardless of how religious their own voters actually are in private life. Name Emil Durkheim and the concept of sacred and profane. As Durkheim argued in the Elementary Forms of Religious Life, the real function of religion is not belief in the supernatural, but the classification of the world into sacred and profane. For the extra layer of marks, bring in Ulrich Beck's Risk Society thesis to explain why this boundary drawing has intensified now. Migration is being reframed as an existential risk under conditions of reflexive modernization. And if you want the sharpest possible counter perspective, use Ashish Nandi's argument that secularism was never a neutral universal, but a specific European settlement now unraveling in its own place of origin. A 14 out of 20 answer will describe the European populist parties one by one, almost like a current affairs quiz. An 18 or 19 out of 20 answer does three things instead. It opens by establishing religion's classificatory function, not its theological one. It explains the present intensification through a named theory. Beck's risk society is ideal here. And it supplies a counter perspective using Nandi that questions whether secularism was ever a universal category at all. The candidates who separate themselves from the rest are the ones who then connect this back to India's own debate over majoritarian revivalism and minority insecurity, showing the examiner that this is not a foreign case study, but the same theoretical logic operating in a different civilizational grammar. Here is your third practice question. Compare and contrast Durkheim's theory of the sacred and profane with Beck's risk society thesis in explaining the global resurgence of religious populism. This is a comparative architecture question, so give both thinkers genuinely equal treatment before you attempt any synthesis. Let's bring it all together. First, Foucault's disciplinary power explains why protest sites become laboratories of surveillance and correction. Second, Comte's positivism is under real strain now that information itself can be synthetically manufactured. And Habermas and Chatterjee sharpen that argument further. Third, Durkheim's sacred and profane distinction explains why religion keeps returning as a political boundary marker, with Beck and Nandi giving you the contemporary and the post-colonial layers. In every single case, remember the discipline that separates toppers from the rest. The headline is one sentence of evidence, and the theory, named precisely with the correct thinker and the correct work, is where all your marks are sitting. That is today's brief. If you would like the complete answer block for every story we covered today, plus one more we held back, including the full model answers, the answer skeletons, the quotation arsenal, and the examiner notes, just leave your email in the comments or write to us at team@upscdesk.com and we will share the subscription details. Preparing for this examination is a long and often draining road, and the real secret is not one brilliant day. It is showing up again tomorrow the same way you showed up today. Take care of yourself. Trust the process, and I will see you in the next brief.